Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Just got back from the gym, so apologies for my appearance, but I had an idea at the gym today for a good topic, so I wanted to sort of get it out before I forget, because oftentimes I have ideas and then I forget like an hour later, and I was like, oh, I should have written it down. So in this case, I'm just gonna sort of get it out and move on to the next idea. So so this video is going to be called Jack of all trades, master of one. Not master of none, master of one. And this is a good freelance tip that I've used for a few years now without really realizing that I was using it. It just sort of happened on its own. So let me explain. So the idea is you want to have a breadth of skills that span a wide range of topics, like front end, back end, even some design, UI, UX, maybe some mobile, a lot of stuff. You want to cover a lot of things, but obviously you can't do all that and like be an expert at all of it. So what you want to do is pick one and really excel at that one. And it doesn't have to be the same one at all times. So for example, for me, in 2014, that one was iOS, just raw iOS. But as time has gone on, that's 4 years ago now. So today in 2018, the one is React Redux because that's the most lucrative now. It's paying the most bills. So you want to, it doesn't have to be the same one, but you want to have one that you accentuate, but still have a breadth of skills. Now, I can still do iOS. I can still do front end, back end, CSS, UI, UX, and some graphic design. Well, not graphic design, but design, some basic design. And none of those are my strongest, except for React Redux. Now, a very common sort of beginner impulse that I've noticed amongst junior developers is they shy away from other areas where they don't feel particularly strong, which is understandable, but they rationalize it by saying like, oh, I'm a back-end guy, I don't do front-end, or like, oh, I'm a front-end guy, I don't touch the back-end. That's a very common refrain that I hear from junior developers, which is really just their way of saying, I don't want to do that. It most commonly happens with the design aspects of a website. So like, I'm a programmer, I'm not a designer, so hand it off to the design guy. Oh, I don't do CSS, HTML, CSS, I only do like raw JavaScript, so hand that off to some other UI, UX guy. And in a big corporate environment or a big company like Amazon or Uber or whatever, that's fine, and that's probably how it's set up already anyhow. But in a small startup, if you're freelancing, if you're contracting like me, then in a small startup environment, that's not always practical. And it's also not to your advantage. So let me explain why. Very often I get a contract. When I have gotten a contract, it's because of my ancillary skills. So let me give an example. Back in 2015, I picked up a web contract, a full stack web contract, one of my first ones, because at that point I was just migrating away from iOS. And it was to build a front end, back end for a startup, obviously. And the founder, she said one of the reasons she hired me, as opposed to the other people she interviewed, was because I also had iOS skills. So that when the time comes for her startup to move on to an iOS app, that solution, me, was already in place. Now, obviously that never happened, and I pretty much knew that wasn't going to happen. But the point is, an ostensibly unrelated skill is what closed the deal for me, if that makes any sense. So someone in your situation, maybe you just finished a boot camp, right? So they most probably focus on some back end, like a Node Express or Ruby on Rails, and like maybe not so much on the front end. I found that most boot camps don't really focus too much on the React Redux side, like client-side frameworks. They all do like JavaScript, jQuery, because that's the easy stuff. But I mean like the hardcore React Redux client-side framework crap, Angular 6 or whatever. But most of them do a lot of like just regular backend, Node Express and Ruby on Rails. So let's say you're coming out of a boot camp, so you have your backend skills and you're probably interviewing for a backend job, but they might say like, at some point they might say, what about front end? Like, do you know anyone who does front end, or can you yourself do some front end work, client-side front end, like React Redux or Angular 6 or whatever number they're on now? You want to say yes. you want to be in a position where you can honestly say yes. Now, it's okay if you say, this is not my strongest area, but I can definitely do some client-side React Redux, or whatever framework they're using. Because then they're more likely to hire you. It gives them more of a reason to hire you. A small startup, let's say less than 10 people, with a seed funding of like maybe under $500,000, which is not a lot of money. They don't want to hire 6 engineers. They want to hire one who can do 6 different things, and that's the jack of all trades. And so you want to be in a position where you can say, honestly, you don't want to lie, where you can say, yeah, I can handle some of this, I can handle some of that. This is my strongest area, right? And it really should be whatever the hardest part of the stack is. So it really should be React Redux or Angular 6 or whatever. But even if it's not, it's okay. You want to be in a position where you can honestly say, yeah, I can handle some of this, so that the startup is more, the founders are more attracted to you, right? Now that's gotten me quite a few gigs. Now along the way, there's an added benefit to this, especially if you load up your skill set, your tool set, with skills that are at the lower end of the spectrum in the pay scale. So that might sound counterintuitive, but let me explain. Like I always say in most of my videos, one of the main things that gets me clients is my design ability. People are attracted to my design, and they don't really understand the actual coding that goes behind it. Well, design in general doesn't cost what I charge by the hour. A typical client, I bill $150 an hour. Right? A designer doesn't charge $150 an hour, especially where I live now. A designer might charge $40, $50 an hour, pretty good designer, right? So what you want to do is you want to fold in your design skills at your highest rate. No matter what you're doing, you should be charging your rate. I bill $150 an hour no matter what I'm doing, right? So my biggest client right now, I put in about 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. About 60 to 70% of that time, roughly 2/3 of that time, all I'm doing is manipulating CSS and updating Sass files to comply with the designer's CSS mockups. That's it. That's it. This is not worth $150 an hour from a pure work perspective. But the reason they hired me is because the entire code base is a monstrosity of React Redux. So a regular designer would have a very hard time. In fact, probably wouldn't be able to just get into the code base and start making commits and making changes and like re-implementing pages, which is what I'm doing. But the actual nitty-gritty of the work, the actual work I'm doing, fundamentally boils down to just updating CSS classes, moving some pieces around, and getting all the code to look the way the designer wants. The problem is that the entire code base is written in React Redux, as I already said, so they had to hire a React Redux developer, me. So what happened there? I'm billing my highest rate, but what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is essentially just CSS and just some design work. So that's sort of I don't want to call it a trick, it's sort of an ancillary benefit. So, a lot of times when I'm doing design work, when I'm doing development work for a greenfield project, so a project that starts from scratch, I would say same ratio, maybe 2/3 of what I'm doing is just putting together wireframes and UI UX designs and mocking up different UI UX presentations with maybe 4 or 5 different themes. Anybody can do that. Like any idiot can do that. That's not a hard thing to do. It's certainly not worth $150 an hour. But what they're paying for is my top level skill, right? But no matter what I'm doing, I'm billing $150 an hour, whether that's making a stupid logo or re-architecting the code base into React Redux or out of React Redux, whatever, right? Either way, I'm billing $150 an hour, right? I told one client a couple of years ago, I was like, look, if you want me to come to your office and just take out the garbage, I'll do that. But I'm still charging you my full rate. I mean, obviously it didn't come to that, but the point is, like, I think the conversation was like, what can you do? Like, what is, give me like a whole summary of your skill set. Um, I was like, I'll do, aside from anything legal, I was like, I'll just come here and sweep the floor. I don't care. Like, if it's paying me my full rate, yeah, I don't really give a shit. That's kind of how I approach all contracts. Like, if you're paying me my rate, then I'll do whatever you need me to do. It still gets frustrating at times, especially when you're arguing with CSS all day. That's not fun. But hey, that's the job. And if they agree to my rate, and that's it. I told them I could do it, and I can. And that's the end of it. So the jack of all trades, master of one is a technique that I've used to up my rate to the highest I can. That's why you want to pick the one. Should be like a very difficult thing. Native iOS, React Redux, React Native is a good thing to get into. That should be like the one. But the jack of all trades should be all the stuff that you don't really think of as like part of your skill. Like UI, UX, design, user flows, mockups, things like that. Even like things like helping out the SEO stuff, right? That's not hard, you know. But a startup, especially with a non-technical founder, needs like everything. And so if you can be the singular solution for like 10 different things, they're going to be more likely to hire you. They'll be happy to pay you your full rate for everything you do. And so what you want to do is you want to anchor your full rate at the hardest skill that you possess, the one, right? The jack of all trades, but master of one. That one is the most important decision you're going to make. So that one shouldn't be like UI, UX. You shouldn't be like a UI, UX designer who knows a little bit of React Redux. That's the wrong way. It should be more like you're really good at React Redux or, Angular or whatever, Vue.js, whatever. But you can also do some design in UI, UX. And that way you can you can sort of anchor your rate while you do everything else the startup needs. And a lot of times it's just easy stuff like updating text copy. Like how hard? Oh, that's easy. I can train a high school kid to do that. But if I'm doing it, I'm charging my full rate. And you know what? Everyone's okay with that. That's it. Like that's how it goes. Everyone's okay with it. Or at least everyone that I've worked with. So that's a good startup tip that I realized today that I was doing without realizing I was doing it. So I guess the moral of that story is, focus on the things you're focusing on. Probably React Redux if you're watching my content, because that's typically what I put out content on. But don't neglect the other stuff. Like, get good at design, or get reasonably good at design, even if that's just implementing themes. Get good at putting together a logo. Like this logo I put together. Is it a work of art? No. Do I have a future in graphic design? No. But is it going to get the job done? Sure. It's not embarrassing. I don't think so. I mean, let me know if you feel differently. But this website, I just slapped on a theme, right? Is it a beautiful website? Is it going to win any awards? Of course not. And I definitely don't have a future in UI UX. But am I embarrassing myself here? I don't think so. Again, if you feel otherwise, please let me know. I'd like to hear it. But startups and clients pay me for this skill, even though my hardest skill, the one, by far, is way more difficult than this, by orders of magnitude. So you want to approach it the same way. Hopefully that makes sense. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions or anything to add to this. That's it. So I'll catch you in the next video.